You think obedience is hard? Try regret. Try waking up 10 years from now in a life you settled for. Try looking in the mirror and seeing the potential you buried beneath distractions, beneath comfort, beneath approval. Obedience isn't about religion. It's about alignment. It's about hearing that quiet pull on your soul and choosing to move before the world gives you permission. It's about trusting the voice inside you more than the noise outside you. Because there's a voice that wants to rise in you, but every time it starts to speak, you silence it with logic. You suffocate it with what-ifs. You handcuff it with fear, disguised as wisdom. You think staying still is safe. Staying still is a slow death in disguise. That idea you keep pushing down, that whisper you keep ignoring, that gut instinct you talk yourself out of, that is the call. And if you delay it long enough, it will turn into doubt. If you bury it deep enough, it will rot into resentment. If you ignore it often enough, it will sound like a stranger, even when it screams. You weren't born to understand the path. You were born to obey the pull. You were born to feel the tension and move anyway. To feel unqualified and show up anyway. To feel afraid and still say yes. Obedience doesn't make sense on paper. It doesn't come with a manual or a blueprint or a round of applause. But it does come with peace, and it does come with power. Because when you move with obedience, you stop negotiating with your calling. You stop making excuses for staying stuck. You stop asking people who don't carry your burden to approve your next step. Every breakthrough begins with obedience, not confidence, not clarity, not perfection. Obedience, the willingness to move even when you feel uncertain, the discipline to show up even when nothing looks like it's working, the audacity to believe that your future is worth the discomfort of today. You think obedience is uncomfortable? Yes, it is. But so is stagnation. So is explaining your dream year after year with no evidence. So is staying loyal to fear because it's the only thing that never left you. Let me ask you something raw, something real. What have you lost by waiting? What did you miss because you were still deciding? What has it cost you, this obsession with certainty? You were never meant to be a prisoner of hesitation. You were meant to rise. And the only way you rise is when you stop worshiping your doubt and start honoring your assignment. Listen, you can delay your purpose, but you cannot escape it. You can run from your growth, but it will chase you. You can fake busy all you want, but deep down you know the truth. You're not stuck. You're just scared to be obedient. Scared that if you commit, you'll lose the option to run. Scared that if you start, people will expect more. Scared that if you say yes, you'll finally be exposed. But let me tell you something. You can't be obedient and stay hidden. You can't be obedient and still seek approval. You can't be obedient and stay the same. Obedience requires your ego to die. That's why it's hard. That's why it's rare. And that's why it's holy. Not because it's religious, because it's sacred. Because it requires a level of surrender this world doesn't teach. This world teaches hustle. It teaches branding. It teaches image and optics and algorithms and angles. But obedience teaches you to move when no one's clapping, to show up when no one's watching, to give your best when no one's affirming. That's the test. That's the gap between potential and power. It's not skill. It's not timing. It's not access. It's obedience. The ability to move without being moved by fear, without needing someone else to co-sign your yes, without waiting for ready. Because ready is a lie. It's a trap the old you built to keep you small. It's the polite mask of fear. It's hesitation dressed in preparation. You don't need ready. You need to obey. You need to say, even if it scares me, I'm doing it anyway. You've been told obedience is weakness, but obedience is war. It's how you fight back against your own limitations. It's how you reclaim your momentum from the lies that said, maybe someday. Let me be clear. Obedience isn't glamorous. You won't always get a sign. You won't always feel inspired. Sometimes obedience looks like showing up tired, posting when no one's watching, building when no one believes, saying yes when you want to say safe. And that's exactly why it works, because it separates the ones who want change from the ones who are change. So tell me, will you obey the pull on your life or keep building your identity around excuses? You can't do both, and time's not waiting for you to decide. If this message hit you deep, if you're done living stuck, if this stirred something you know you can't ignore, like the video, not for us but as a signal to yourself that this moment mattered. Drop a comment. Let us know what you're breaking free from. Share it. Someone in your life is silently drowning, waiting for a word like this. You weren't created to blend in with delay. You were designed to pierce through it. But somewhere along the way, you started bargaining with time. You thought your calling could be put on layaway, that purpose was polite, that destiny would knock gently and wait patiently on your doorstep until you felt courageous enough to answer. But let me remind you of something the world forgets to tell you. Purpose is not patient. It is persistent. It's relentless. And the longer you ignore it, the louder the consequences become. Obedience is the only language destiny understands. Not perfection, not performance. Obedience, the ability to feel resistance and move anyway. To feel fear and still put your foot on the gas. To not wait for your emotions to be convinced, but to move your emotions by your decision. You keep saying you need motivation, but what you really need is to stop lying to yourself. You say you're waiting on a sign, but every breakdown you've endured, every whisper you've ignored, every sleepless night that begged for more was the sign. The voice in your head that keeps telling you there's more for you, it's not wrong. It's obedient to your higher self. The part of you keep betraying in silence. Obedience is how you take your power back. Not by shouting louder, but by listening deeper. Because there's a war going on inside you between who you've been taught to be and who you're destined to become. And your old self will fight like hell to stay alive. It will convince you that average is peace. It will dress stagnation up as balance. It will offer comfort as a reward for staying exactly where you are. But don't fall for it. Comfort is not a reward. It's the ransom you pay for not obeying your potential. And every day you refuse to act, your future pays the price. Listen closely. The version of you that lives on the other side of obedience, they are not waiting for more clarity. They are waiting for you to decide. You don't get to become them by making peace with delay. You get there by making war against every excuse that has disguised itself as wisdom. That's the deception. Excuses don't show up wearing masks and horns. They show up in your own voice. They sound rational. They sound cautious. They sound justified. But what they really are contracts you've made with your own mediocrity. Break them. Rip them up. Set them on fire. Because you can't walk into the life you were born for while dragging the chains of your delay behind you. Your calling does not need your comfort. It needs your commitment. It needs you to move even when you don't have all the answers, even when it doesn't look like it's working, even when it feels like the wilderness, because you're leaving behind the familiar for the first time in your life. And that's what obedience feels like. At first, not certainty, but death. The death of your ego, the death of your old identity, the death of what the world said success should look like, and the birth of who you really are. There will be days obedience feels like betrayal. Betrayal of your past. Betrayal of your upbringing. Betrayal of your comfort zone. Betrayal of everything small you were ever told to stay loyal to. But it's not betrayal, it's rebirth. You are not losing yourself by being obedient. You're finally meeting the version of you who's been buried under years of compromise. It's time to stop apologizing for your assignment. Stop shrinking your truth to fit the expectations of people who were never assigned to walk your path. Obedience is not a favor you do for yourself. It is a responsibility you owe to every version of you that never made it this far. To every night you wanted to quit but didn't. To every time you failed and got back up anyway. To every silent prayer that you cried when no one else could hear. You didn't come this far to pause. You didn't survive hell just to sit in comfort and play small. You didn't battle your demons just to stay stuck in fear, now dressed up as logic. No, you came to break chains, to disrupt cycles, to become someone your past would never believe, to make every valley worth it, every tear sacred, every storm make sense. But it won't happen by wishing. It won't happen by waiting. It will only happen through radical, ruthless obedience. You want freedom? Then obey your future, not your feelings. Because if you don't command your soul to move, your emotions will convince it to sit still. This world isn't waiting on your perfect timing. It's moved by those bold enough to take the first step while shaking. Every legacy you admire was built by someone who moved before they felt ready. They obeyed the whisper, not the weather. Do you think Edison waited until the world believed in electric light? No, he became the belief. He failed over and over, but obedience told him, go again. Even when the world called him foolish. Even when there was no guarantee. Even when the evidence said quit. And that's the secret nobody talks about. The evidence will almost always tell you to quit. The bills will scream louder than your dream. The critics will outnumber your confidence. The progress will be invisible. But that's when obedience is most sacred, when it feels like madness, when it looks like isolation, when it sounds like silence. But your spirit knows this is where you were born to walk. Do you understand what that means? That your calling isn't looking for convenience? It's looking for covenant, not a moment of excitement, a lifetime of devotion. Obedience doesn't make sense until it starts bearing fruit. But it only bears fruit when you stay planted through the drought. And that's where most people fail. Not because they're incapable, but because they mistake delay for denial. Because they interpret resistance as rejection. Listen to me. There are roots growing beneath your discomfort. There is a foundation being built in the silence. And if you quit now, you won't just lose the harvest, you'll forfeit the identity that was growing with it. You want to be the one who finishes. You want to carry power when you speak. You want to move mountains when you show up. Then earn it in the dark, in the mundane, in the discipline nobody claps for. Because that is where obedience refines you. That is where purpose begins to trust you. Some people pray for the promise, but refuse to be forged by the process. They want the crown, but not the crushing. But if you truly understood the cost of your calling, you wouldn't keep flirting with procrastination. You wouldn't keep dancing with doubt. You would rise every morning with fire in your bones because you understand this simple truth. Obedience is how you prove you're ready. You want your next level, your next chapter, your next dimension. Then your daily actions must become prophetic. They must point toward a future you haven't seen, but already live like it's inevitable. Your identity must evolve before your results do. You don't become the person after the breakthrough, you become them before. And that's what makes the breakthrough chase you. But if you continue operating from fear, you'll only manifest more of what fear creates. Hesitation, confusion, distraction, delay, stockiness dressed as strategy. You can't strategize your way into your next season. You must surrender. And surrender doesn't mean giving up, it means giving in to the fire that never stopped burning inside you. It means saying, I will not die, wondering who I could have been if I had just obeyed. You've spent enough years listening to fear, obeying your past, trusting your limits. Now it's time to make a different vow. A vow to your future self. A vow to the version of you who has been waiting for you to finally say, "I'm done pretending I don't hear the call." Because that's what fear wants. It wants you numb, busy, distracted, safe, small. But your greatness was never designed to fit inside that box, so burn it. Burn the excuses. Burn the false humility. Burn the need for permission. And rise not because you feel ready, but because you finally believe you were born for more. If this message hit you deep, if you're done living stuck, if this stirred something you know you can't ignore, like the video not for us, but as a signal to yourself that this moment mattered, drop a comment. Let us know what you're breaking free from. Share it. Someone in your life is silently drowning, waiting for a word like this. You will never regret the pain of obedience, but you will carry the torment of delay every time you bow to comfort. A piece of you whispers, "This wasn't the plan." And you feel it, don't you? That subtle ache in your spirit reminding you that your soul signed up for something more, that your silence has become too loud to ignore, that staying where you are hurts worse than the stretch toward where you're called. We glorify transformation, but nobody teaches you how violent it feels when your old self starts to die. It doesn't leave peacefully. It claws. It bargains. It seduces you with nostalgia and lies, offering you one more reason to wait until you're more certain. But certainty is the currency of the lazy. Obedience is the language of the brave. You see, at some point you must stop needing signs and start being one. At some point you stop asking God, "Is it time yet?" and you start declaring, "I will move because I was created to." That is the shift. That is when you stop living by reaction and begin leading with intention. When you stop waiting for breakthrough and become the storm that breaks through. But don't misunderstand, this isn't about hustle for the sake of motion. It's about alignment. And obedience is the proof of that alignment. It's not about doing more, it's about becoming the kind of person who no longer negotiates with fear. Obedience looks like choosing discipline over dopamine. It's choosing the early morning run instead of the extra hour of sleep. It's choosing to forgive instead of carrying the weight of resentment. It's choosing to work on your vision when everyone else is numbing theirs with noise. It's invisible at first, unrewarded, misunderstood. But that's the price of becoming uncommon. You won't always be applauded. You won't always feel progress. You won't always be certain. But obedience doesn't need applause. It doesn't need comfort. It only needs a decision. One ruthless decision: I'm done playing small. I'm done shrinking to fit the version of me other people feel safe around. I'm done letting my doubt lead the way. Because here's what nobody told you. When you refuse to sacrifice for your calling, you will sacrifice your calling. You will bury it under someday. Under, "I'm not ready." Under the pressure of pretending you're content. But your future deserves more than that. It deserves your fire, your faith, your full presence. Not the version of you that only shows up when it's easy. You say you want purpose, then stop waiting for it to knock louder. Purpose doesn't shout. It whispers and waits to see if you're listening. And those who respond to that whisper, they rise. They build legacies. They shape history. Not because they were lucky, but because they obeyed when it was hard. You want change? Then do what's hard. Do what's inconvenient. Do what your excuses said you couldn't. Because on the other side of obedience is not just a better life, it's a better you. There comes a moment in every builder's journey when the voices around them grow quiet and the only sound left is the echo of their own decision. That's the moment you learn what you're really made of. Not when people cheer, not when it's popular, but when nobody claps, when the path is invisible. And obedience feels like walking blindfolded toward fire. That's when your old identity starts screaming. It screams for distraction. It begs for validation. It pleads with you to just go back. back to fitting in, back to playing it safe, back to seeking approval before action. But you didn't come this far to turn back. You didn't survive what broke others just to stay stuck in cycles you were born to end. So many people think obedience is about control, but it's actually about freedom. The kind of freedom that only comes when you're no longer ruled by fear. When your mood doesn't dictate your momentum. When you stop living by convenience and start moving by conviction. And here's the truth, if you won't do it, afraid you'll never do it at all. Because fear never leaves. It adapts. It gets clever. It disguises itself as logic, as patience, as wisdom. But deep down, you know when it's fear talking, because it always makes you smaller. And obedience, real obedience, it doesn't shrink you, it stretches you. It demands you hold yourself to the version of you that only action can reveal. This isn't about impressing the world. This is about becoming the kind of person you would trust with your own dream. Someone who doesn't wait to feel ready. Someone who doesn't break under pressure. Someone who moves forward because they decided to, not because they felt like it. Because waiting to feel like it is how most people die, with potential still in their lungs. Obedience isn't always rewarded right away, but the fruit is inevitable. Because every small act of obedience is a seed in the soil of your future. You won't see it tomorrow, maybe not even next month, but keep planting. Obey when it's lonely. Obey when it's silent. Obey when no one gets it. Because those who obey in obscurity are the ones trusted with the spotlight later. God doesn't test your comfort. He tests your character. And He'll often hide your next level on the other side of your last no. No to comfort. No to delay. No to the addiction of being liked. You say you're stuck. But are you really stuck, or are you just avoiding the pain of obedience because pain is inevitable? But purpose is a choice. And every day you delay obedience, you choose to keep paying rent in a life you've outgrown. This isn't about pushing harder. It's about surrendering deeper. It's about trusting the whisper more than the volume of your fears. It's about saying, I don't need the full plan. I just need the next step and the courage to take it. Because the next version of you isn't found in more thinking. It's found in radical action. The kind that terrifies your comfort, but electrifies your spirit. So stop waiting to be discovered. Discover yourself. In the trenches. In the silence. In the obedience no one else sees. Because, in the end, you will either obey your calling or obey your fear. But you can't serve both. If this message hit you deep, if you're done living stuck, if this stirred something you know you can't ignore, like the video not for us, but as a signal to yourself that this moment mattered, drop a comment. Let us know what you're breaking free from. Share it. Someone in your life is silently drowning, waiting for a word like this. Every decision is a seed, and the longer you stay stuck in indecision, the more weeds grow where your purpose was meant to flourish. You say you're waiting on a sign, but what if the sign is your discomfort? What if the pain isn't a punishment, but a push? A push to leave what's familiar, to stop surviving on almost, to quit bargaining with your destiny as if it owes you more time. It doesn't. The world isn't going to pause until you feel ready. Opportunity doesn't come with a warning. It comes with a whisper. And if you can't hear it in the chaos, you've got to learn to hear it in the stillness. That's what obedience does. It clears the noise. It silences the excuses. It exposes everything you thought you needed but never did. You think you need clarity. But what you really need is courage. Clarity is a reward. Obedience is the test. You're not stuck because you're weak. You're stuck because you keep asking for comfort in a season that requires change. And change will never come gift-wrapped. It will come wrapped in discomfort, wrapped in inconvenience, wrapped in hard choices. You will have to let go of some people. You will have to disappoint expectations. You will have to give up parts of your identity that were never rooted in your calling, just your conditioning. And yes, you'll grieve that version of you, but don't confuse grief with regression. Grief is proof that something is ending, and what's ending is what kept you average. Obedience is trusting that the version of you who is becoming is stronger than the version of you that's afraid. You want the reward of greatness, but you keep negotiating with mediocrity. You want resurrection, but you resist the crucifixion of your comfort zone. You want purpose, but you won't release the patterns that keep you from it. And yet, deep inside you, there's a whisper louder than your fear. A still, small voice saying, "Don't go back. Back to delay. Back to self-doubt. Back to settling for less than what you prayed for." Because the truth is, you don't need another sign. You don't need more time. You don't need to explain your decision to people who were never meant to walk your path. You just need one thing to obey. To obey when it's hard. To obey when it hurts. To obey when your mind screams no, but your spirit whispers go. Obedience is not about blind submission. It's about bold alignment. It's about becoming so anchored in your purpose that no wave of doubt can move you. The world rewards the bold, but heaven responds to the obedient. And when you move with obedience, doors open. Mountains shift. Provision shows up in places logic could never explain. Not because you manipulated it, but because you moved. Because obedience isn't about seeing the whole staircase, it's about taking the first step, even when the rest is hidden in fog. This is the cost of greatness. This is the fire that forges leaders. This is the unseen discipline that becomes visible favor. So don't just pray for a new life. Move like it's already yours. Because the version of you who obeys in the dark is the one who shines in the light. The battlefield is rarely loud. Sometimes the war is waged in silence. In the quiet hours where no one is watching. In the moments when you could slip back into old habits and no one would know. But you would know. You would know you said yes when you meant no. You would know you tolerated something that chipped away at your worth. You would know that once again, you chose the easy road that leads nowhere new. That's the war you're fighting, not against the world, against yourself. And if you don't learn to win that war, you'll spend your life dancing around your destiny, always close, but never in it. Because purpose doesn't yield to potential. It answers only to obedience. Potential is what you're born with, but obedience is what you build with. Potential will whisper of what could be. Obedience will carve it into what is. It's the discipline of doing it afraid, of doing it again and again and again, even when the results aren't immediate, even when your feelings are screaming for an exit. Because if you wait until you feel like it, you'll never move. And if your feelings are stronger than your standards, you'll stay stuck in cycles that drain you dry. Let me remind you, you don't rise by feeling ready. You rise by refusing to stay small. That's what obedience looks like. Not glamorous, not perfect, just consistent. That's how empires are built. That's how legacies are born. That's how the quiet, obedient ones, the ones who no one noticed, the ones who were overlooked, suddenly become undeniable. Because God doesn't promote popularity. He promotes preparation. He's watching how you handle the delay. He's watching how you carry yourself when no one is clapping. He's watching how you speak when you feel forgotten, because how you behave in obscurity determines how long you'll last in visibility. And if you can't be faithful in the wilderness, you won't survive the weight of the promise. Obedience is the training ground. It's not sexy. It's not fast. But it's holy. It's sacred. It's the soil where strength is grown. So stop looking at obedience like a cage. It's not the thing holding you back. It's the only thing strong enough to launch you forward without breaking you in the process. Some of the greatest doors you'll ever walk through are on the other side of choices no one will ever see. And the ones who last, the ones who finish, they're not the ones who had more talent. They're the ones who chose obedience even when talent wasn't enough. They sacrificed the impulse for the instruction. They picked purpose over popularity, and they moved, even when it cost them everything familiar. Because they understood this: you either die to who you were, or you die with the potential of who you could have become. And nothing is more painful than being buried next to your unfulfilled calling. You want change to feel comfortable. You want transformation to feel familiar. You want the future to arrive without asking for the sacrifice of the present. But that's not how it works. Real transformation doesn't ask politely. It demands that you put something down: a mindset, a habit, a relationship, an identity. Something has to die for something greater to be born. And obedience is the funeral. It's the burial of comfort, the death of delay, the surrender of your timeline. It says, I don't have to understand everything to move. It says, I don't need applause to obey. It says, I trust what I'm being prepared for more than what I feel right now. Obedience is not submission to control. It's alignment with calling. And alignment is painful because it pulls you away from who you were so you can become who you were born to be. Think about every powerful life you admire. Every person who rewrote the narrative. They didn't rise because it was easy. They rose because they refused to disobey the assignment on their life. Moses wasn't ready. Esther didn't feel qualified. David was overlooked. Gideon was terrified. Jesus was betrayed. But they obeyed anyway. And that obedience cracked open the impossible. Because here's the truth. The favor you're praying for, the clarity you're begging for, the breakthrough you're waiting for, it's all on the other side of the obedience you've been avoiding. You keep asking God to move, and He's waiting for you to move in alignment. You want the miracle, but you won't build the altar. You want the next level, but you won't leave the old one. You want peace, but won't release the thing poisoning your soul. And the longer you delay, the deeper you dig the hole you're standing in. Stuck isn't a condition, it's a decision. The enemy doesn't need to destroy you, he just needs to keep you comfortable enough to stop you from ever becoming dangerous. So here's your line in the sand. Here's the moment that rewrites everything. You've been circling the mountain long enough. You've talked about change long enough. You've prayed for new but refused to release the old. Now it's time to obey. Even if it hurts, even if you don't have the whole picture, even if you have to walk alone, even if they don't understand, even if it costs you everything that's familiar. Because the pain of obedience will never match the pain of staying stuck in a life that's beneath your calling. You weren't created to cope. You were built to conquer. And the first act of conquest is to obey the voice that called you before fear taught you to play small. So now it's you. Not your past, not your pain, not your excuses, not your comfort. You, standing face to face with the version of yourself that refuses to move and the version of yourself that was born to rise. One will live, one must die, and the deciding factor is obedience, not perfection, not credentials, not popularity, but obedience to the whisper, to the calling, to the unseen fire inside you that refuses to be extinguished. You don't need a sign. This is your sign. You don't need a guarantee. Your breath is your proof. You don't need more time. Obedience redeems time. So stop bargaining with your greatness. Stop waiting for permission to become who you already are. And move. Move while it's hard. Move while it's uncertain. Move while fear is screaming. Move like your future depends on it, because it does. And when the doubt returns, because it will, you remind it of this moment, this decision, this fire, this word. You obeyed. And that obedience cracked the ceiling. That obedience shook hell's grip. That obedience is why you're no longer stuck. Now breathe deep. You're no longer a prisoner. You're the one who obeyed when others hesitated. You're the one who broke the pattern. You're the one who moved. Now don't keep this to yourself. If this message hit you deep, if you're done living stuck, if this stirred something you know you can't ignore, like the video, not for us, but as a signal to yourself that this moment mattered. Drop a comment. Let us know what you're breaking free from. Share it. Someone in your life is silently drowning, waiting for a word like this. And most of all, obey again tomorrow. Because obedience is hard, but staying stuck is fatal. And you didn't come this far just to survive. You were born to move mountains. Now go.